In tonight's Dorchester segment, we turn once again to the city election, along with news about a local branch library and potential new development on the UMass Harbor campus. To fill us in is the executive editor and publisher of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry. Thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
Great to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Bill, I want to start with the election and the yeoman's work that the reporter has been doing lately, just to even tell people who's running and what they're running for. And you had a big chunk of that just recently about the candidates running for city council at large. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, Chris. Thank you. We're trying to just really provide some initial information to voters about this large field of candidates, both in the district races and at large city council. You know, the mayor's race takes up most of the oxygen in the room, generally speaking, and for good reason. That's a big race and a very competitive and interesting one. But the city council election this year is also a very interesting field and an important selection. We have two at-large vacancies right now, with Anissa Sarby-George and Michelle Wu running for mayor, leaving their seats open. 17 men and women have made the ballot. It's a big field to try to win one of the four seats in the at-large council. Incumbent Michael Flaherty and incumbent city councilor Julia Mejia are both on the ballot, of course, and generally speaking, incumbents fare well and are usually reelected in the council. But this is an interesting year because obviously with all the activity around this open mayor's seat, I think, you know, there's some new dynamics in play. So we take a look at that in this coverage recently. Last week, we published a multi-page summary of mini profiles on each of the 17 candidates, most of whom, spoke to our reporters about who they are and outlined some of their policy positions, what makes them distinct from other candidates in this field. As in most elections, there are a couple of tiers of viability here. I think in the at-large race, we have some candidates who are racking up significant endorsements and also piling up fundraising and money to spend in the preliminary election. Of course, this is all leading up to the September 14th preliminary election, in which this field of 17 will be cut down to 8. Some of them had some significant endorsements come their way over the last week. I'll mention a few of them. Erin Murphy and Ruthie Lujuin, both were endorsed this week, just yesterday, by IBEW Local 103, which is a significant union endorsement out of Dorchester. That's a union that has been, distinguished itself with getting out behind candidates like Representative Ayanna Presley when she ran against Mike Capuano successfully. Local 103 was one of the few unions that broke her way. Other electoral movements. John Spillane, who's running for at-large council, was endorsed this week by Frank Baker, the Dorchester District 3 City Councilor. Baker has also thrown his support behind Erin Murphy. She continues to get significant union and political endorsements. And David Halbert, who's a second-time candidate now, was endorsed this week by the Arroyos. The District 5 Councilor Ricardo Arroyo backed David Halbert, as well as his father, Felix D. Arroyo. So David Halbert's seeing some good pickups this week too. And what's happening, endorsements don't mean victory necessarily, right? But they, the critical mass of endorsements shows strength and organization and viability, and also bring in money in the door for some of these candidates that they need to be competitive. I'll mention also in District 4, which is a very interesting race. We have 9 candidates running to succeed Andrea Campbell in District 4. We did a similar package of information, mini profiles on all of those candidates. This week saw a couple of interesting endorsements in that race. Avandro Carvalho, who is the former state representative in the 5th Suffolk District, which includes parts of Dorchester and Roxbury, was endorsed by his successor, Representative Liz Miranda, this weekend. Liz Miranda obviously is a very well-known quantity in that district, in District 4. She's out canvassing and helping Carvalho with his campaign now, and that's very helpful to him. The other person in the race who's picking up endorsements is Joel Richards, who's a first-time candidate from Fields Corner. And Joel Richards was backed this week by the Greater Boston Labor Council. And he's also been backed by Sunrise Boston, which is an environmental group, was very active in the re-election of Senator Markey, is pretty active in the mayoral campaign for Michelle Wu. And they threw their support in their volunteer bodies behind Joel Richards last weekend. So that race is starting to be, shaped a bit more by endorsements, field organization, and who has really the capacity to get voters out on September 14th. So a lot more information about all of these candidates and these district races, you can find it at .news.com. And just a quick teaser, next week we'll be focusing on the District 7 council race. That's the seat that Kim Janey, acting Mayor Janey, will effectively give up and leave open. I believe there are 7 candidates running for that seat.
When I look over the information about endorsements and fundraising, one thing that certainly got my attention was, I think that is at the last report, I think the number 2 candidate in terms of cash on hand running for city council at large was Ruth C. Louis-Jeune, behind Michael Flaherty. And some people might say they never heard of her before. How did that happen? I think you know a bit more about her than that. How would you explain it?
Right. Well, Ruth C. Louis-Jeune is a Haitian-American lawyer originally from Mattapan. Her parents have been active in the Haitian community, very active politically in the city for the last couple of decades. And so she's not a neophyte politically, and she's herself been very active politically. She was a policy advisor to Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's been endorsed by Senator Warren, which is quite significant for an at-large city council candidate, first-time candidate. She's also been endorsed by people like City Councilor Lydia Edwards, City Councilor Kenzie Bach, so existing city councilors who would like to see her join them as their colleague. So she has a diverse array of endorsements, as diverse as the Boston City Firefighters Union, and all the way to the teachers union, and then progressive, icons like Senator Warren. So a big tent, and yes, that's led to significant donations coming her way. She's a real contender for winning one of these open seats.
And I know, of course, Erin Murphy is also blessed with a strong base in a politically active ward, Ward 16 in Dorchester. In that ward, also, of course, one of the things that maybe comes from having good turnouts is you get the library fixed up. What's going to be happening on Adams Street?
Yeah, Chris, we have a brand new library that's going to open this weekend on Saturday morning. The Adams Street Branch Library has been totally rebuilt. The old one was torn down 2 years ago. It's part of what was the Walsh administration's real commitment to rebuilding and preserving and enhancing the BPL system. The Adams Street Library, the original one, was built in the 1950s. It was kind of small, cramped, a bit outdated, and the mayor at the time, Mayor Walsh, decided, look, we're gonna build a brand new library. It cost $18.3 million to do it, and it shows. It's a beautiful looking building. I had the chance to walk through it a couple of weeks ago, and it's got all kinds of new amenities for library users, especially for children and teens who had a very small section of the library at their disposal before. There are 250 seats in this library, all scattered throughout the building, with, of course, new spaces, workspace for adults as well. A lot of plugins where you can put a laptop and do your work there in peace. And it's going to, as I mentioned, be dedicated this Saturday at 11 o'clock. I expect we'll see a lot of folks come out for that. Very popular branch. It was well used even in the older building. And one really nice feature is a community room which will fit over 100 people with new AV system. It'll be a place, I'm sure, where the community will gather for meetings. It'll also host the election for during election time. It'll be a polling location. And significantly to people who live around there, it's named in memory of Pat O'Neill, who was a much loved civic figure throughout Dorchester, and particularly in this Ashmont Adams neighborhood where this library is located. We lost Pat last year, unfortunately, at age 80. She passed away last March. And quickly, the neighborhood decided, look, we need to do something to remember Pat in this building. She was always there. So the Pat O'Neill Community Room is part of what will be rededicated or dedicated anew this Saturday morning.
Bill, we have a little time for one other story you're covering, and this is about UMass inviting proposals to redevelop a part of the Harbor campus that has a very old name, the calf pasture. What are the possibilities there?
Right. So the calf pasture pumping station, people who go, walk on the Harbor Walk will notice it. It's this old, big castle looking building that was actually, part of the city's sewage system going back to the 1880s. And it's a remnant of what was then the old calf pasture, people called it. It's now called Columbia Point. And, this is on the historic register. It cannot be torn down. It's in danger of falling down at some point because it's in pretty bad shape. And so UMass has controlled this site for a number of years. They've decided that they want to incorporate it into their campus and reuse this building, along with building up probably some new buildings around it. So they've asked the development community for, to gauge their appetite on redeveloping with them. And they got a lot of positive feedback 2 years ago when they put out that request for, interest. So they've now put out an RFP, a request for proposals, seeking to designate this site to a private developer who will, in partnership with UMass, create what they're going to call University Crossing at Dorchester Bay. We'll see exactly what comes back on those RFPs in the next few weeks, and we'll report back. But it's a missing link piece of the Columbia Point and the UMass campus, and it's kind of exciting. It's also important that we preserve that building, which is a significant historic structure in the neighborhood.
Well, I know these political developments are picking up pace as we speak, and you have people at the Reporter who are keeping an eye on that. So if any folks want updates, what's the best place to find that online?
Well, you can certainly go onto our website, .news.com. We have a specific section of the site dedicated to city politics called the Lit Drop, and you can follow us on Twitter @.news. All of our political reporters, Gin Dumpshus, Katie Trajano, Rebecca Pereira, are all, gathering information daily and reporting daily on the city election. So do go online and on Twitter to follow all of us.
Well, thank you very much once again for keeping us posted.
Thank you.
Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter.